My mother handed my daughter a small box wrapped in shiny red paper with a silver bow. We were sitting around the Christmas tree, the room full of warm light and the sound of tearing wrapping paper. My father sipped his coffee from his favorite mug, my uncle sat quietly in the corner, and my mother watched my daughter with an intensity I couldn't ignore. Lily peeled back the paper, her little hands eager and quick. Inside was a small brass key on a thin piece of ribbon and a folded note. She handed the note to me, expecting it to be part of some little game. I unfolded it and read the words out loud without thinking. Let them search the basement. The chatter in the room stopped. My father's cup clinked softly as he set it down. My uncle shifted uncomfortably in his chair. My mother's face froze in a stiff smile, as if she had just realized she had made a mistake. I felt my stomach tighten. I didn't understand what the note meant, but I knew one thing. My mother never did anything without a reason. 20 minutes later, I would be standing in that basement, the door locked behind me, my parents pounding from the other side, and my phone pressed to my ear as I called the police. They were not ready for what they would find. Christmas morning at my parents' house had always been the same. The smell of cinnamon rolls drifted from the kitchen, mixing with the faint scent of pine from the big tree in the living room. Ornaments from decades past hung from its branches, some made by my brother and me in grade school, their paint chipped and glitter faded. My mother, Margaret, had arranged the presents with her usual precision, largest at the back, smallest up front, each one tied with perfectly curled ribbons. It was the first time in 3 years that I had agreed to come back for the holiday. The last visit ended in a fight that lasted months. My mother had a way of turning family moments into tests, and I had decided to protect myself by keeping my distance. But this year, my daughter Lily had begged me to come. She missed her grandparents. She wanted the Christmas she remembered from when she was little. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The morning began smoothly enough. My father, Walter, wore his favorite red flannel shirt and seemed content to sit by the fire, sipping coffee from the chipped mug I made him in 7th grade. He didn't say much, but then again, he never did. My Uncle Frank, my mother's younger brother, sat on the edge of the sofa, occasionally chiming in with small talk about the weather and how bad traffic had been the night before. Lily sat on the floor by the tree, her hair still messy from sleep, cheeks flushed with excitement. I took my usual place in the armchair near the fireplace, coffee in hand, watching Lily tear into the gifts I had brought. The laughter and rustle of wrapping paper filled the room, and for a moment, it felt almost normal. My mother was in her element, directing the morning like a conductor guiding an orchestra. She had a particular way she liked the gift exchange to go, one person at a time, everyone watching as the present was opened. She claimed it was so we could appreciate each gift, but I had always thought it was her way of controlling the moment. When most of the gifts had been opened, my mother reached under the tree and pulled out a small red box wrapped in shiny paper. The silver bow was tied neatly in the center, its loops perfectly even. She walked past me and stopped in front of Lily, her smile warm but her eyes fixed and deliberate. "This one's for you, Lily," she said. "From you, Grandma?" Lily asked, grinning. "Yes," my mother replied, placing it gently in her lap. I picked it out myself. I glanced at her hands. They lingered on the box for a moment before letting go, as if she were passing something delicate. There was something in her tone I couldn't place. Too careful, too controlled. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Oh, it's for Lily to open," she said, brushing off my question. Lily started peeling away the paper. My father shifted in his chair, his eyes on the gift. Uncle Frank crossed one leg over the other and looked toward the window, his jaw tightening. My mother kept her gaze locked on my daughter, her smile never wavering. The paper came off in neat strips, revealing a small cardboard box. Lily opened it and pulled out a thin brass key, the kind you might use for an old-fashioned lock, and a folded note. She looked puzzled. "What's this?" she asked, holding the key up to the light. "Let me see the note," I said. She handed it to me, and I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was my mother's, unmistakable in its sharp, slanted letters. The words were simple, but strange. "Let them search the basement." The room went quiet. The fire popped loudly in the silence. My father set his coffee cup down, the sound of ceramic on wood sharp in my ears. Uncle Frank shifted in his seat, glancing toward my mother. She kept her expression pleasant, but I saw the flicker of something in her eyes, discomfort, maybe even fear. "What does that mean?" I asked. "Oh, it's just part of a little game," she replied quickly. "A Christmas treasure hunt. Thought I'd do something different this year." "A game?" I repeated, my voice flat. "Yes," she said, still smiling. "You remember how you used to love scavenger hunts as a kid? I thought Lily might like it." Lily looked between us, unsure if she should be excited or confused. "That's thoughtful, Grandma," she said hesitantly. I forced a smile for Lily's sake, but something in my chest tightened. My mother didn't play games, at least not ones like this. The basement had been off limits my entire childhood. I had never been down there, not once. Whenever I asked why, I got the same answer. It's dangerous, too much junk, not safe for children. By the time I was a teenager, I had stopped asking. Now, out of nowhere, she was giving my daughter a key and telling her to search it? I glanced at Uncle Frank, who was avoiding my eyes. I caught his attention and tilted my head slightly toward the kitchen, silently asking him to follow me. He hesitated, then stood and walked out with me. In the kitchen, away from the tree and the forced cheer, I lowered my voice. "What's in the basement, Frank?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's not my place to say." "You're her brother. If you know something, I need to hear it." He looked down at the floor. "Don't go down there, Hannah. Just let it go. Some things you're better off not knowing." I stared at him, my pulse quickening. That's not an answer. Before he could reply, my mother's voice rang from the living room. "Everything all right in there?" "Fine," I called back. When we returned, my mother was standing by the tree again, her hand resting lightly on Lily's shoulder. She gave me a look that was both warning and challenge. I sat down, but my mind was already working. Whatever was in that basement, I was going to find out. I sat in the armchair, watching Lily twirl the brass key in her small fingers. The way it caught the light made it seem older than anything my parents would normally keep. The weight of the note sat heavy in my mind. My mother's explanation still rang false, and the more I replayed her tone, the more certain I became she was hiding something. Margaret had always been good at controlling narratives. Growing up, she could change a conversation's direction so quickly you would forget what you had asked. She could make you believe her version of events without you realizing you had accepted it. But I was older now, and I had spent the last decade building a life without her interference. That distance had given me a clarity I never had before. Lily set the key on the coffee table and reached for another present. My mother smiled and encouraged her, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Her gaze kept flicking to the key, as if she was waiting for someone to pick it up. My father avoided looking at it altogether, focusing on straightening the wrapping paper pile beside his chair. Uncle Frank sat stiffly, his hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles were pale. I picked up the key, feeling the cool metal against my palm. "You said this was part of a game," I said to my mother. "So where's the rest of the instructions?" Her eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second before softening again. "It's simple. You take the key downstairs and you'll find the first clue." "The basement?" I asked. "Yes, where else would a key like that go?" Her voice was light, but there was an edge beneath it. "I thought the basement was unsafe," I said. "You never let me down there." Her smile faltered for just a heartbeat before returning. "That was years ago. It's fine now." Lily perked up. "Can we go see Mom?" I hesitated. Every instinct told me not to involve her, not until I knew what I was walking into. "We'll see," I said. My mother's voice sharpened. "It's just a game, Hannah. Don't ruin the fun." That last part wasn't for Lily. It was for me, a warning disguised as a joke. The room felt heavier now. The cheerful crackle of the fire seemed out of place against the unspoken tension. I stood and walked toward the basement door at the back of the hallway. The door was closed, as it always had been, the wood scratched near the bottom as if something had clawed or scraped against it. I held the key tighter, running my thumb along its ridges. The lock gleamed faintly in the dim hallway light. My heart thudded in my chest. Behind me, footsteps approached. Uncle Frank's voice was low. "Hannah, think about what you're doing." "I am thinking," I said without turning around. He stepped closer. "She's not going to forgive you if you open that door." I finally looked at him. Why do you sound more worried about her feelings than about what might be in there? He glanced over his shoulder toward the living room, then back at me. Because once you see it, there's no going back. Before I could respond, my mother called out, "Frank, come help me in the kitchen." His shoulders tensed. He gave me a final look, the kind that said he wanted to say more but wouldn't dare. Then he turned and walked away. I slipped the key into my pocket and returned to the living room. Lily was sorting her new art supplies, oblivious to the undercurrent between the adults. My father was staring at the fire, his jaw tight. My mother stood behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder, her eyes fixed on me. The rest of the morning passed in an uneasy rhythm. Every smile felt forced, every laugh short-lived. I couldn't shake the image of that locked door. By the time lunch was served, I had made up my mind. I was going to open it. Not later, not next week, today. After we ate, my parents insisted on taking Lily outside to see the snowman my father had built earlier. I agreed, using the moment to my advantage. The second the back door closed, I walked quickly down the hall and stopped in front of the basement door. The key slid into the lock with an ease that told me it had been made for this exact purpose. The click echoed in the quiet house. I opened the door slowly, a cool draft brushing against my face. The stairs descended into darkness. The air smelled stale, tinged with something metallic and damp. I reached for the light switch, but it didn't work. Only a faint glow from a small basement window lit the edges of the room below. Halfway down, I heard the crunch of snow outside. They would be back soon. My pulse quickened, but I kept going. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, the sound loud enough to make me glance over my shoulder. At the bottom, my shoes touched cold concrete. The dim light revealed shadowy outlines, shelves, boxes, something larger covered with a heavy tarp. I took a step forward. My hand brushed against a workbench. Papers and small objects were scattered across it, the shapes barely visible in the gloom. My fingers landed on a hard, flat object, a photograph frame. I lifted it toward the light and saw a picture of a young woman I hadn't seen in over 20 years. Claire, my babysitter. She had vanished when I was 12. The sound of the back door slamming shut jolted me. Voices carried through the floorboards above, sharper now. My mother's voice rose first, urgent and fast. My father's followed, low and tense. I heard footsteps overhead, moving quickly toward the hall. My heart pounded as I set the frame back down. I knew I didn't have much time. I needed light, I needed answers, and I needed to get out before they found me down here. The sound of footsteps above grew louder, fast and deliberate. I glanced toward the staircase, my pulse thudding in my ears. My mother's voice rang out from somewhere near the hallway, sharp and unmistakable. I moved quickly along the basement wall, my hands brushing over cold concrete until they found a string hanging from the ceiling. I gave it a hard pull, and a single bare bulb flickered to life. The light revealed more than I was prepared for. Against the far wall stood 3 tall, dented metal storage lockers. Each one was secured with a thick padlock. Next to them was a workbench, cluttered with items. Old wallets, pieces of jewelry, rolls of cash, bound with rubber bands. There were plastic bins stacked high, some labeled with years written in my mother's handwriting. But it was what sat in the corner that made my stomach tighten. A small cot with a neatly folded blanket, a pillow, and next to it, a worn leather purse. I knew that purse. I had seen it hanging on Claire's shoulder the day she vanished. The police had searched for her for months. Eventually, they told everyone she'd probably left town on her own. I never believed them. I reached for the purse with trembling hands and unzipped it. Inside was Claire's driver's license, expired, along with a stack of photographs. Some were of her, smiling and laughing. Others were of strangers I didn't recognize, but all of them looked like they had been taken in this basement. The heavy thud of feet on the basement stairs snapped me out of my thoughts. I turned toward the steps and saw a shadow moving against the wall. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and started snapping pictures of everything. The lockers, the workbench, the purse, the photographs. "Hannah!" My mother's voice came from halfway down the stairs, breathless and angry. "What are you doing?" I backed up toward the lockers. "You need to tell me what this is." "You don't understand," she said, her voice lowering. "Put the phone down and come upstairs. We'll talk." "I'm not going anywhere until you explain this," I said. Her expression hardened. "You've gone too far." That was when I realized there was no safe conversation to be had. My mother was not going to explain. She was going to make sure I left here without any proof of what I had seen. I took another step back and slid my phone into my pocket. "Lily is outside," I said. "You will not go near her." "You think you can threaten me in my own house?" she asked, her voice shaking with fury. My father's voice came from the top of the stairs. "Margaret, get up here." She didn't move. Her eyes stayed on me, sharp and unblinking. I could see the calculation in them, the same look she had when she decided whether to scold me or charm me as a child. That was the moment I made my choice. I was not leaving without calling the police. I moved to the base of the stairs, placing myself between her and the rest of the basement. "Either you get out of my way or I'm calling right now," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You have no idea what you're starting." "I don't care," I said. "This ends today." I dialed 911 and turned my back on her, walking toward the far wall to keep distance between us. My voice was steady as I told the dispatcher my address, that I had found evidence connected to a missing person, and that my parents were trying to stop me from leaving. Margaret started up the stairs slowly, her hand gripping the rail. I could hear my father muttering to her, his voice too low to make out. Then his footsteps pounded toward the kitchen. I turned back to the lockers and examined the padlocks. They were heavy, industrial. I doubted I could break them without tools, but I kept photographing them anyway. I wanted every angle documented. From above, the sound of the back door opening made me tense. I prayed Lily had stayed outside. I wasn't taking chances. The dispatcher stayed on the line with me, asking questions. I answered quickly, my eyes scanning the room for anything else I might have missed. There were more boxes under the workbench, some marked with years going back before I was born. I pulled one out halfway and saw more wallets, keys, and watches. The creak of the stairs made me spin around. My Uncle Frank appeared in the doorway at the top, his face pale. "They called someone," he whispered. "Who?" I asked. "I don't know," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "But you need to be ready when they get here." I tightened my grip on my phone. "Frank, you can help me. Tell me what all of this is." He hesitated. "I didn't know about Claire, I swear. But I knew they kept things down there that didn't belong to them. I told them to stop years ago." "You didn't tell anyone?" I asked, my voice sharp. He shook his head. "Family business stays in the family. That's what Margaret always said." I stepped toward him. "Not anymore." The wail of sirens in the distance cut through the air. Relief and dread crashed over me at the same time. My mother's voice erupted from upstairs, shouting something to my father. Footsteps thundered above. Frank's eyes widened. "They're going to try to stop them from coming inside." "Not if I can help it," I said, pushing past him up the stairs. The front door was in sight when my father stepped into the hallway, blocking my path. His face was grim. "Turn around, Hannah. Now." I didn't stop. "Move." "You call the police on your own family. You'll regret it," he said. I heard car doors slam outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the front windows. My hand tightened around my phone. "You'll regret it more if I let this go." The police knocked once before pushing the door open. My father stepped forward, but one of the officers held out a hand and ordered him to stay back. Two uniformed officers moved into the hallway, while a third stepped toward me. "Ma'am, you called about possible evidence?" the lead officer asked. "Yes," I said. "It's in the basement. You need to see it now." My mother appeared in the living room doorway, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "This is a misunderstanding. My daughter is overreacting." The officer didn't even look at her. "Ma'am, we'll need you to step aside." She didn't move. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her chin lifting in challenge. For a moment, I thought she might refuse entirely, but then she stepped back just far enough for the officers to pass. Her eyes stayed locked on me, cold and unblinking. I led them down the hallway to the basement door. The key was still in my pocket. My hands shook slightly as I unlocked it, the metallic click echoing in the silence. I pushed the door open and flicked on the light. The officers filed in behind me. When the bulb lit up the room, the nearest officer stopped in his tracks. His gaze swept over the lockers, the piles of cash, the workbench covered in wallets and jewelry. One of them crouched to examine the bins marked with years. "What's in those?" he asked. "Personal items," I said. "Some belong to people who disappeared years ago. I recognize one of them." I pointed to the leather purse in the corner. That was my babysitter's. She went missing when I was 12. The officer opened the purse, pulling out the driver's license and photos. He looked at the pictures for a long moment, then handed them to his partner. "Bag these." From upstairs, my mother's voice rang out, sharp and urgent. "You have no right to go through my things." The lead officer called back. "We have probable cause. You'll want to remain upstairs." I stayed near the wall as they worked, watching them open drawers in the workbench and pull out more small boxes, each filled with valuables. Then one of the officers examined the padlocks on the storage lockers. "Get the bolt cutters," he said to his partner. When the lock snapped open, the metal door creaked loudly. Inside were neatly stacked boxes labeled with names. The officer opened one and froze. He looked back at the lead officer, then reached in and pulled out a stack of photographs. They were all of women, taken in this same basement. Some were smiling, others looked afraid. The second locker held more boxes, but these were larger and heavier. Inside were bags containing clothing, shoes, and more purses. The third locker was different. Instead of boxes, it contained several large black plastic bags tied tightly at the top. The smell hit immediately, damp and faintly metallic. The officer stepped back. "We need the detectives here now." I felt the air leave my lungs. My chest tightened as the reality of what I was seeing sank in. This wasn't just theft. This was something far worse. The officers moved quickly, securing the scene and calling for backup. I heard more sirens in the distance, growing louder. The lead officer motioned for me to step outside with him. As we reached the top of the stairs, my mother was standing in the hallway. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Hannah, you don't know what you've done." I stopped in front of her. "No, Mom, I finally do know what you've done." Her eyes flickered, the faintest crack in her composure. My father stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, his expression blank. Two more officers entered through the front door, followed by a plainclothes detective. The lead officer briefed him quickly, pointing toward the basement. The detective turned to my parents. "You're both going to need to come with us." My mother straightened her back. "On what grounds?" The detective's voice was calm but firm. "On the grounds that your basement contains stolen property, evidence connected to multiple missing persons, and potential human remains. You'll have a chance to speak at the station." The officers stepped forward, placing handcuffs on both my parents. My mother's eyes never left mine as they led her toward the door. My father kept his head down. Lily was standing just outside, bundled in her winter coat, holding the hand of a young female officer. Her eyes were wide, her cheeks pink from the cold. When she saw me, she broke free and ran into my arms. "Mom, what's happening?" she asked. I hugged her tightly. "The police are taking Grandma and Grandpa away. You're safe now." She looked past me toward the flashing lights and the officers escorting my parents. "Why?" "Because they were doing bad things," I said gently. "Things they're not allowed to do." The detective came over, his tone softening. "We'll need to take your statement tonight, but for now, it's best if you and your daughter stay somewhere else." I nodded, still holding Lily close. "We'll go to a hotel." The officers continued to move in and out of the house, carrying evidence bags. The red and blue lights reflected off the snow, turning the yard into a shifting canvas of color. Neighbors stood at the edges of their driveways, whispering to each other, their faces a mix of curiosity and shock. When the police cars finally pulled away with my parents inside, the street fell quiet except for the crunch of boots on snow. I looked back at the house, the place where I grew up, and felt a strange mix of grief and relief. The truth was out. Whatever came next, I would never be the same. I turned away, guiding Lily toward my car. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go." As we drove away, the yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the cold wind, marking the house that had kept its secrets for far too long. The hotel room was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. Lily had fallen asleep on the bed, still wearing her coat. I sat in the armchair by the window, staring at the phone in my hands. My statement to the police had taken hours. The detectives had asked the same questions in different ways, checking for any detail I might have missed. Every time I thought about the lockers, the photographs, and the smell from the black bags, my stomach tightened. The news spread quickly. By morning, the house where I grew up was on every local station. Reporters stood at the end of the driveway talking into cameras as officers moved in and out of the front door. The headlines used words like disturbing discovery and possible serial theft and homicide investigation. I didn't need to read between the lines to know that the truth was worse than most people could imagine. Detectives told me the investigation would take months. They believed my parents had been keeping stolen property in the basement for decades and suspected the items were connected to multiple, unsolved cases. They didn't say much about the black bags, but I didn't need details to understand the gravity of what they had found. Uncle Frank called me the next afternoon. His voice was unsteady. "I'm sorry, Hannah. I should have told you years ago." "You should have told the police," I said. "I thought I was protecting the family," he replied. "I didn't realize what they were really capable of." "They were capable of all of it," I said. "And you knew enough to know it wasn't just harmless secrets." He didn't argue. He just said goodbye and hung up. In the days that followed, I had to explain to Lily why we wouldn't be seeing her grandparents again. I told her the truth in a way she could understand, that they had done very bad things, and now the police were making sure they couldn't hurt anyone. She asked if I was sad. I told her I was, but not for the reason she might think. I wasn't sad they were gone from our lives. I was sad for the years I spent believing they were something they weren't. The hardest part was looking back on my childhood and realizing how much of it had been shaped by lies. The basement had always been a place I wasn't allowed to go. Now I knew it wasn't about safety. It was about hiding what they didn't want anyone to see. Every locked door, every sudden change in topic, every warning to stay out of grown-up business had been a piece of the wall they built around their secret. Friends and neighbors reached out, some offering sympathy, others fishing for details. Most of them couldn't believe it. My parents had kept up a spotless public image. Church every Sunday, volunteering at community events, smiling in every holiday photo. But behind the closed doors of that house, they had been building a different legacy entirely. I thought about Claire often. She had been kind, patient, and quick to laugh. I remembered the day she vanished, how my mother told me she had quit without notice, how the police search turned up nothing. Now I knew that the truth had been sitting under our feet the whole time. I also thought about what might have happened if Lily had gone down to the basement first, if she had been the one to open those lockers. The thought alone made my chest tighten. The detectives told me I had done the right thing by calling. They said the photographs I took before they arrived might be crucial in linking my parents to other cases. But doing the right thing didn't make it easier. There was no sense of victory, only the weight of knowing the truth and the damage it had done. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding some sense of normalcy for Lily. We moved into a small apartment in a different part of town. I found a school where no one knew her grandparents' names. We kept our routines simple: school, homework, dinner, bedtime. At night, after she was asleep, I would sit by the window and think about the word family. For years, I thought it meant loyalty no matter the cost. My parents had taught me that family was about protecting each other, even when someone was wrong. Now I understood how dangerous that belief could be. Family is not about keeping secrets that destroy lives. It is about trust, honesty, and safety. Those are the things worth protecting. When the trial date was finally announced, I didn't feel anger so much as clarity. I would testify. I would look my parents in the eye and tell the truth, no matter how much they tried to twist it. They had built their lives on control and deception. I was done living under either. The night before the hearing, I stood by the window in our new apartment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Lily stirred in her bed and mumbled something in her sleep. I thought about the key, the note, and the moment I decided to open that basement door. It had been the hardest decision of my life, but it had also been the one that saved us. I knew the road ahead would not be easy. The past could not be erased, and the truth would follow us. But I also knew this. Lily would grow up in a home without locked doors that hid dangerous secrets. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. If this story moved you or kept you hooked until the end, take a moment to like this video so more people can hear it. Share it with someone who loves powerful, true-to-life stories, and tell me your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story. Your support helps keep these stories coming.